Why do I claim Agile frameworks are costly? That's what I mentioned in the end of last video, and I'll even make the statement bolder. They are not just costly, they are also inefficient. Now, that truly may come as a surprise because Agile frameworks are introduced specifically to solve this waterfall model because it's not very adaptable to changing environments and because it wasn't very cost efficient. So it is a bold claim, and in this video I will actually go into depth why I strongly believe it is the case. To focus on what really matters, I'm gonna introduce a small part of last video to start with.
Now, if you're picturing a lot of people out there doing crazy things and a bunch of arrows going in a bunch of different directions, you have the wrong picture. You create the environment so that those people are out there making decisions as if the CEO were standing right behind them. And if it's not the same decision, it's actually a better decision because they have the information.
Let's start with explaining how it's not crazy and it's a doable solution to actually prove or demonstrate that it's a better solution. That's going to require a little bit more explanation. So first, doable. The essence is it is a self-organizing system, and the best way to introduce this self-organizing system is to look where we see the systems appearing in physics. So what I'm going to show you is called the Bernard convection cells, and it's a demonstration of how this self-organizing happens in a fluid. So what you see in this first diagram is a fluid where there is no energy put on it, and so all the interactions go in all directions. So what is called crazy in the video before with the people, here it's just random interactions. And what happens next is that you heat the bottom, and so the physics will want to disperse the energy. So the heated parts go up and it cools down at the top. And first it collides randomly, but some of them will create a positive feedback. And once you have this positive feedback, you get these convection circles happening. So then we moved from an interaction to a coordination. And of course, what you see is that when it's happening on one side here, it's happening on it's going down over here, it's going up over here. So if you shift, you will see that the circles nicely connect, and then it looks a little bit, you could actually see it as a train, while the interaction are just people in a network interacting. While if you look at the convection cells, what you could see is like the agile team, where there is like a whole dynamic creating the coordination within the team. So what the scaled agile methods, Spotify, Less, and Safe are trying to do is actually create that train, right? But that's like one dimension. If you look at the third picture, you actually see the top view of what is happening. And what is happening, it looks more like the honey grid, and there are actually very good mathematical, physical reasons why it starts getting those patterns. But that's not the essence I want to focus on right now. What I like to focus on is that even in this simply fluid, you will see that there are some deviations from the default nice hexagon structure. Not all of them are hexagon, and there are good reasons why they are not like that. There may be very local forces, maybe there's something in the water, maybe there's something in the surface. There can be all kind of interaction. Maybe it's just an historical accident, and that's going to be even bigger with large organizations. So when I say that it's the frameworks that are out there are costly and inefficient, what I see is that they're trying to create this perfect hexagonal structure by creating a managerial structure of the for scaling the agile. While what I mentioned before is like what I observe in the digital communities is that this self-organizing is happening because there's this Git structure underneath creating the platform to actually make all the self-organization happening. So let's have a look at what Git actually is.
Okay, what is GitHub? Well, GitHub is a platform that helps people solve problems by building software together. So, how does it work? This is Sam. Sam works on tractors all day, but not in the way you might be thinking. She builds the software that helps make tractors more efficient. And she does this on GitHub with the help of her team, VJ, Melinda, and Mike. Now, even though they all work on the same project, Sam and her team don't all work in the same part of the world. This is Eddie. Eddie also works on tractors all day, except he actually works on the tractors all day. And this is the Harvester L700. It's the latest flagship in the company's fleet of tractors. It's full of sensors and processors that produce a ton of diagnostic data. Eddie has a great idea for how farmers might share their data and improve their harvests. So Eddie opens an issue on GitHub. Issues are discussion threads where people can report bugs, request features, or even just ask questions. Sam is the first one on her team to see Eddie's issue, and she thinks that VJ would be the best person to start the job. And here's where we get into the nuts and bolts. Eddie isn't the only person using the Harvester L700. All over the world, other tractors are collecting moisture data, and they need to keep running smoothly even while VJ is working on the new features. He needs a dedicated place to experiment, so none of his changes end up on the farm before they're ready. So he creates a branch of the code, an alternate timeline where he can safely make changes to the software. Now he's ready to start writing the new feature. GitHub tracks VJ's changes and saves snapshots of his progress. When he's ready to collaborate on the changes with his team, he opens a pull request on GitHub. Pull requests let you show others the changes you're proposing so they can review and discuss them. This means VJ's teammates can help with roadblocks and even make improvements. On GitHub, everyone has a copy of the project. So if Melinda has an idea for something that will help make VJ's work even better, she can add it to the branch herself. GitHub keeps a record of everyone's contributions and feedback in the pull request, alongside relevant messages from the team's other systems. Once the team has signed off on the changes, VJ can incorporate the new code into the project. The new feature will be available to everyone as soon as he merges it in. Now farmers everywhere can all benefit from Eddie's great idea. But this is really only the beginning of the story. Because GitHub is the largest community of developers in the world, with millions of people sharing their projects, Eddie's idea could end up helping people in unimaginable ways. What kinds of problems are you trying to solve? Whether you're an engineer, a code enthusiast, or even a farmer trying to harvest grain, software touches every corner of our lives. GitHub is where people build that software. It's how they build software. Together.
So GitHub is one of the Git repositories out there. They made a very good video, so I just showed theirs. Now, if you see those arrows going all over the place, it may elaborate why the metaphor of the swarm behavior with birds is good to keep in mind if you think about how those developers are interacting. Now, what the investigations with the digital business ecosystem has shown is that the entrepreneurs on top of that platform of all that information out there, like all those issues, how they use that from an entrepreneurial point of view. And that's if we want to scale that up to large organizations, we need that other metaphor, right? So we go from a swarm behavior of non-hierarchically connected entities to a meta system where there's a clear hierarchy while you don't reduce the complexity. So that's why I keep that metaphor of the art performance strand-based there to keep the focus on what we want to get at. It's one thing I mentioned in previous video as well. We need the hierarchy. What you see is that many of these new concepts like holacracy and sociocracy and all that, they are struggling today with the scale because they don't fully understand how the relation with hierarchy fits with the self-organizing. But when you go to the domain of complex systems and you go way deeper into like neurological studies and other phenomena, so you will actually start getting a better understanding of how information hierarchy still exists in all of these systems. So what we need is like a balance of the hierarchy. The hierarchy is basically bureaucracy, and there's another part in the Spotify talking about this hierarchy. So let's introduce, give that part.
One common source of waste is what we call big projects. Basically anything that requires a lot of squads to work tightly coordinated for many months. Big project means big risk, so we are organized to minimize the need, and instead try hard to break projects into a series of smaller efforts. Sometimes, however, there is a good reason to do a big project, and the potential benefits outweigh the risks. And in those cases, we've found some practices to be essential. Visualize progress using various combinations of physical and electronic boards. Do a daily sync meeting where all squads involved meet up to resolve dependencies. Do a demo every week or two where all the pieces come together so we can evaluate the integrated product together with stakeholders. These practices reduce risk and waste because of the improved collaboration and short feedback loop. We've also found that a project needs a small, tight leadership group to keep an eye on the big picture. Typically, we have a tech lead, a product lead, and sometimes a design lead working tightly together. On the whole, we're still experimenting a lot with how to do big projects, and we're not so good at it yet. One thing we keep wrestling with is growth pain. As we grow, we risk falling into chaos. But if we overcompensate and add too much structure and process, we risk getting stuck in bureaucracy instead. And that's even worse. So the key question is really, what is the minimum viable bureaucracy? The least amount of structure and process we can get away with to avoid total chaos. Both sides cause waste, but in different ways. So the waste-repellent culture and agile mindset helps us stay balanced.
So you see that the problem they acknowledge is the big projects, and while things like Spotify and Safe and Less are very applicable when it comes to software development, and which are basically new aspects for large organizations, new in relative terms, right? I mean, what is 10 years for a large organization? It's nothing. So what you see is that they do acknowledge that it's a problem, that it's costly, that there is this whole balance of bureaucracy they're trying to approach, and to actually investigate how do we get all that knowledge that we gained by participating in digital communities, and how do we create something similar to Git, but then for a managerial point. And remember that they say like, okay, they go from this self-organizing, and then they want to get to a point where as if the CEO is watching them. So that's specifically an experiment that's been done, where I show how the supervision of normally 30 projects can scale up to a supervision of 300 projects. And that's basically by the observation made on how those entrepreneurs are using the whole repository structure for their business, and use that to solve a supervision problem. Basically, in this case of the experiment, it's going from supervising 30 projects to supervising 300 projects. So that's a scale factor multiplied with 10. So I can go into details on how that experiment rolled out and how that makes the whole thing even being better than if the CEO was doing it. So, but like I said, that's a tougher thing to do, so I'll do that in a separate video. And the other aspect that's pretty interesting when you go to hierarchy and the difference between chaos and order, it's you come back to concepts that are investigated in cultural aspects. And I'm thinking about the archetype. That's the word I was looking for. So, but basically, it's I'm going not in detail about this idea of this spirit of the digital transformation. It's still something I'm exploring at the moment. There's a strong relation to clinical psychology and many of the recent trends being observed in the digital world. But that's again a video on itself. So it's already entry to two videos. One showing how it can be smarter than CEO, and the second one start talking a bit more about what is this spiritual stuff. Okay, so again, I'm still hoping to get any questions or any interactions. If you, by the way, have even suggestions how to make sure I can spread these videos, anything is welcome, anything can go. And hope to see you next week. Bye.